I'm happy to introduce to you the Empire author, Michael Hardt.
Thanks very much. Thanks again to the students in the Deleuze and Guattari seminar, which was a really intense 3 days, and I appreciate it. I enjoyed it. 2 years ago, I was here, and I spoke in the evening mostly about empire and multitude, the same old thing. But for about 5 minutes at the end, I talked about love. And to my surprise, it seemed to meet with Wolfgang's interest and approval. So I decided over the past few years to talk more about love. And I've been working on it, so that's what I want to talk about tonight. And I've tried to work it through. Here's the question that's guiding me. Is how can love function as a political concept? Along the way, I'll talk about love in other terms, but that's really what's guiding me. And so what I've prepared is divided really in 3 parts. A brief introduction, why love, like why talk about love. A central part about love proper, in which I'll try to talk about in a way, the proper and improper ways, in my view, that love has functioned politically. And then a third brief final part about evil and its relationship to love. Okay, so first though, as part of an introduction, I tried to formulate what I want from love, like what I want from love as a political concept. Yeah, I should start out by saying too, in many contexts, like especially in the normal university context, it's very uncomfortable to talk about love. When I start talking about love, people start squirming in their seats. They think maybe I've been around Italians too long. And even things that when I recently spoke something similar, I did part of these things about love at a lecture at Harvard, and Homi Bhabha was supposed to respond to me, and instead of responding, he sang Motown songs about love, which just made me super uncomfortable, but didn't seem to really take seriously So when you talk about love, I think there is a lot you have to work against. And I'll talk about that in general. Anyway, what I'm interested in love as a political concept is this. It fits within a larger political problem that I have facing the theory of the multitude, which I don't actually, I think you might understand as I go what I mean by the multitude. So we've been talking for 3 days, I think I at least explained some elements of it. But the problem is this, that once we first recognize that people today, right now, the people at large are not able to rule themselves, are not capable of democracy, we have to ask, or I have to ask, what are the capacities people have now that can lead them in the direction of self-government? Because that's actually the aim of this project of the multitude, let's say. Here's the short version of it, which is, in the age of globalization, how is a democracy possible? In fact, a democracy that's closer to what democracy is meant to mean than the pale notions of democracy we've suffered through in our various nation states. It seems to me, though, that when asking these questions about what are the capacities of people today that can lead in the direction of the ability to rule themselves, to make democracy possible, I find myself continually stuck in a divide or sort of no man's land between spontaneity and dictatorship. And it seems to me that love can function in that gap. So let me explain for a minute what I mean by this division between spontaneity and dictatorship. First, let me give you an example from Lenin about this, and then from Slavoj Žižek. I wanted to preview it's going to be about Slavoj, so in case you get bored with Lenin, you can know that we're going to something a little bit closer to you. Lenin, but I think that Lenin is necessary for understanding Slavoj. Okay, I'm thinking of it of Lenin's book, State and Revolution, written on the eve of the October Revolution. And Lenin says in the book, our aim is for a new kind of democracy, a democracy that goes beyond this electing every 4 years someone who will misrepresent you from the ruling class. But we have to make revolution with human nature as it is now. And human nature as it is now, Lenin says, of the Russian people, they need managers, they need supervisors, they need to be commanded. That's what human nature is now. So the anarchists say, this is Lenin's critique of them, the anarchists believe that people will change spontaneously on the day after the revolution. But Lenin thinks that's completely unrealistic or naive. that people will suddenly become able to rule themselves once the Tsar's regime is destroyed, or once this so-called democracy of the bourgeois state is destroyed. So Lenin says what's needed is a dictatorship in order to transform the people. And so that period of transition in which the people will be transformed under the rule of a dictatorship of the proletariat will eventually, with the withering of the way of the state, lead to a democracy, when there is then a people who's able to rule itself, and there's a new people. Zizek says something really similar in this recent book, Parallax View. And it's amusing the way he does it, of course. I chose Zizek because I know he's well-known around here. So I thought he would be a good person for this. What Zizek's doing, and it's quite amusing, is he's commenting on a poem by Brecht, a poem that Brecht wrote after the worker revolt in Berlin, the revolt which was brutally suppressed by the East German authorities. And so Brecht was quite bitter, and Brecht writes ironically, maybe the regime should just dissolve the people and elect a new one, which Brecht means as a kind of bitter joke. So Zizek, true to form, polemically writes, yes, that's exactly right. It's naive to believe that the people are spontaneously good, capable, wise, etc. We need a new people. And so that he, like Lenin in a way, is saying, we need a dictatorship. This is, I think, the content of his Leninism, more or less, is that we need a dictatorship, we need some sort of command in order to transform the people, in order to make a new people. So do you see how I am? This is what I mean by, I feel like in these arguments, I'm caught in this no man's land between spontaneity and dictatorship. Like either assuming on the one hand that people today are spontaneously able to rule themselves without capitalist control, without state control, without supervisors and managers, like Lenin said. Either this, what I agree, I think, is a naive position of spontaneity, or the only other alternative is a kind of dictatorship. People need to be transformed, and in order to do that, they need to be commanded in order to change them. So I'm saying, what is it that lies between these two? In other words, how can we become a new people by ourselves? What means do we have for collective self-transformation that can lead toward our being able to rule ourselves? And it's there in that gap that I think of love. I'm thinking of love, so this is all just trying to situate it for you, at least where I'm coming from, which is that love could be a process or even a field of training for constructing a democratic society. So that's what I mean in a way by love as a political concept. So there are two other introductory things I need to say about why love. One, and they're really about why I'm going to love rather than other concepts. Yeah, many friends tell me, friends of a certain sort say, Mike, why don't you talk about solidarity, not about love? Solidarity is a good old commie concept. Why can't we just talk about that? And it seems to me that what love does rather than solidarity is that love extends beyond our standard conceptions of rationality, beyond the rational calculus of interests. That's essentially the way I understand solidarity. I'm sure, of course, all these terms you could use differently. But I understand solidarity as essentially a calculation of interests in which we aid each other or unite with each other because of mutual interests. It seems to me that love, on the contrary, develops a different relationship between reason and the passions, or a different kind of rationality. It doesn't seem to me that love as a political concept especially is strictly a passion. It's rather a notion of reason that isn't excluded from the passions. The second one is people say, why don't you talk about friendship? Friendship is much easier than love. And it's true that I'm sure that I can think of many classical examples, much in the work of Derrida, for instance, about friendship that tries to work on the same terrain. It seems to me, though, that love, as in contrast to friendship, involves transformation. In other words, we lose ourselves in love, or in love we become different. Whereas I understand friendship primarily as not having that transformative capacity. Friendship I rather understand primarily as an interaction and union or solidarity that doesn't transform the subjects involved.